Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham and such. Just throw that in. Bonus. Anyway, so I guess we'll get rid of this. Ooh. Anyway, I'm all alone now. No me to keep me company. So, just another week, I'm afraid. But they're all... something happens. You change as a human being every single day almost. Seems things are happening and you're changing and, bleh. Sometimes not for the best. Mood certainly does alternate between positive and negative conditions. But your overall theme does seem to be changing in terms of its seems to have some sort of direction, whatever that may be, in terms of the clarity of your vision in certain directions. So anyway, the fake Sagan, who is now the Christopher Anderson, has started making videos again, and not really good. And he's playing with the word race and in a way that is sort of just trivializing the real problem, which clearly it does. I mean, I don't want to get on that subject. I mean, I want to get on the subjects that underlie it, such as intelligence and passion. I thought those were kind of important words. And so anyway, so the race thing just becomes really it's just scapegoating, and it's like this superficial characterization and qualification of what something is. Generalizations that are just supposed to be sort of by intelligent people. They're supposed to kind of know you can't. The correlation is not something built into the thing. It's built into a lot of circumstances. And so you sort of can't blame people for bad luck, and you can't blame them for a lot of things. Race just gets caught up in a lot of that stuff because people think people are genetically something when they're not really genetically that. That they're just culturally that. This whatever this negative is, a useless person, a person of lower character, a person of defects, some kind of defects that are more substantial than your own group of defects. All right. Well, anyway, I'm not doing a great job of finding perfect language to make the point that the genetic differences between us are very minuscule compared to the ideological differences, the ones that are just based on underlying assumptions. You want to make a big difference in how a person behaves or how a person even thinks, just give them the notion that God created their universe versus somebody who doesn't think God created the universe. Makes a big difference in who that person is going to be in terms of, generally speaking, what you can expect in terms of interactions, and even ideas of intelligence. Just because to make such a stupid error, as to believe in a fairy tale, would imply that the person has some functional defect in their brain, that they haven't recognized that. If you are susceptible to believing that, you probably want to keep it private because it's like, oh man, I'm an imbecile. It's so obviously stupid to announce your firm belief in something for which there's no evidence except your desire for it to be the truth. I mean, that's such an obvious fallacy against intelligence, if you want to call the fallacy something like that. Alright, so anyway, this whole idea of what intelligence is kind of a silly thing, just because it's, there's volumes of knowledge you can have, And then there's skills you can have, you know, intelligence skills, which are things like knowing basic stuff about, you know, what's heavier than something else, you know, what fluids are thicker, or what, you know, just a lot of mechanical things that'll make you less likely to slip in the mud, or, you know, simple rules of life, like if you're stuck in the mud in your car, you know, keep your steering wheel straight. You're more likely to get out of the mess you're in. You know, little logic rules that you learn through life experience. And some people glean those experiences. They have a lot of them in their life, and some people don't. And for very weird reasons, like some person, it's like a person could be, let's say they're very attractive, and so they're very popular, and so they can spend a lot of time being invited to parties, and invited here and invited there, and then they spend very little time reading books, or even watching movies, or doing something else where they might learn through some experience that isn't going to be as redundant as the experience of just opening doors and getting your ticket and sitting in your right seat and buying your Coke, and you know, you're not going to learn much. And a lot of real life experiences aren't rich in knowledge. You can't glean much from them because they don't have a whole lot of fancy mechanics, where it's the unreal experiences, the synthetic ones, that can have a lot deeper, a lot more information can be gleaned out of something that's like a film of a fish underwater. You can learn a lot about fish underwater. You know, some kind of silly thing, something that's abstract and not very relevant to real life, can contain more components that might give you insight into how the world works versus ones that don't. Now, me even bringing up popular culture and movies or stories as a way of gaining knowledge or information is sort of the opposite of my argument made in I did a room during the week with a guy from Denmark, right? Denmarkian, yeah, Denmarkite. Anyway, and you know, I made a whole spiel about how I really don't want to get into analyzing movies and all that kind of crap, because it's all mostly rubbish, and there isn't enough food value for the all the wrong messages that are sent, which are all the happily ever after solutions, all the magic power solutions. I mean, none of these movies have anything to do with real life and how doomed you are by the fact that we are so powerless and we don't have any capacity to overcome the impossible odds with some sort of magic power. We have to do it through some real process that is, you know, incredibly difficult. And so, you know, most movies, in my opinion, are just more lies about how somehow you can overcome things that can't be overcome. And that we all should recognize, you know, they make the unacceptable acceptable because they always make it possible to heal any wound. You just go back in time and make the wound not happen. You know, there's always some magical solution. Anyway, too tangential. So, I would argue that intelligence is, as I have argued, most of the stuff that we need to know to be functional, you know, pretty good at being the human machine, is just basic crap. I mean, the golden rule, you know, and you can add a few little technical details, manners, you know, which I'm not too good at, I'll admit. I should be smart enough to know better than to allow myself the freedom, the liberty, to say what feels good rather than what might be the more appropriate thing to say. But I'm smart enough to know also that I'm doing that because I am just being a selfish cunt. You know, but I shouldn't have said selfish cunt. But anyway, because yes, it makes life easier for me to be able to just speak my mind and not have to censor my vocabulary into clinical, technical speak. It's work, and I don't want to do the work, and that's the simple truth. So I would argue the truth is really simple, basic stuff. It's almost as simple as learning 2 plus 2, learning that other things feel, that the value of their feelings is no less than the value of your feelings, that they feel bad, it's not different than you feel bad. I mean, these are just basic shit. And you don't need a 190 IQ to be able to understand that. And then a lot of the social construct, the politics, it can get slightly more complicated in terms of how to manage people and how to create rules that are likely to create fairness, but it's really not that difficult. If I made you the king of hockey or the king of baseball or the king of football, and you had the power to decide what the rules are, I don't think you would struggle, in terms of trying to write fairness rules for the game. You'd be able to figure out what fairness means and how to apply it, and not that big a deal. And the same is true in our society. You reward people who sacrifice their TV time, to go to work and do something they don't really enjoy doing, and you pay them appropriately for that fact, as long as they're doing it with some sort of diligence and efficiency. They're not just goofing off. It's a fact that you reward people for their sacrifices, and you pay them commensurate to those sacrifices, and for the difficulty of the job, kind of thing. And that's just sort of logical, that people should earn it, and that we can have a rational definition of what earning it is. And earning it, I think anybody who has a little bit of intelligence can figure out that earning it isn't inheriting it. That it's not the same thing. Walking into a mansion and sitting on the couch is a lot different than building the mansion. Very different things, very different activities. Come on. This isn't difficult. It's just not. And so I would argue that this conversation about what intelligence is in the context of a world where people haven't first figured out God is a fable, that it's, even if you want it to be true, there's no evidence that it's true, and all the evidence points to it not being true. That even if there was a God at some point in the universe's history, it's apparent that God slipped on a banana peel or something and he died, because he's nowhere to be seen. There's just no evidence of that he's paying any attention whatsoever. And that's been proven and demonstrated over and over and over. And so why are we even, how can I have a conversation about intelligence when most people can't even crawl over that little bar of not believing in the 3 bears? Because really that's all the religious fables are. They're just old archaic stories about little fantasy characters in fantasy circumstances that never really took place. Just didn't happen. Pyramids weren't made by gods. They were made by millions of people doing hard labor. And that's just the truth of everything that exists. It was man-made, including the stories that the men fall for, so to speak. So I'm just saying, having a conversation about who's more intelligent on a planet where most people believe in absolute nonsense, and it's clearly nonsense. I mean, it's not even well disguised nonsense. The stories are self-contradicting, no consistency at all between the old book and the new book, you know, yet they glue them together for some dumb reason when they're completely almost a different species of living theory. That's how bad it is. It's overtly contradictory themes, morality, ethics, and somehow they glue the two together as if you're supposed to accept the contradictions of throw as many stones as you can and then don't throw any stones. I mean, it's that clear. I mean, one book in the Bible says, yes, if you got a stone, throw it. And the next story is, don't ever throw a stone because somebody might throw one at you. Yeah, doesn't make any sense. So having a conversation, I'm just saying, about intelligence. It just sort of insults the word intelligence for human beings to talk about their intelligence in this context. So in Fake Sagan's video was just kind of, he did a lot of things that were annoying, but he talked as if he knew something about simians or apes. You know, he's talking about how they live in the moment or something, and that's just nonsense too. Because if you have an ape, let's say you have two apes in a zoo or something, and you pull one away, the other ape gets really bothered, and then when you put the other one back, the one ape will inspect him, and if anything's changed, he'll notice the change and wonder and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, Fake Sagan was talking as if they have no idea of time passing and that things missing, and you know, of course they do. That's why they do have an IQ of some measurable level, is because they can figure out puzzles. They can remember what happened at a previous time and expect it to happen another time when the circumstances are similar. They can predict the future. That's why they have a measurable intelligence. Just silly, you know, to say they can't do these things. You know, he used an example like something like they can't even make a fire. Well, either can I, frankly. You know, I mean, I have some idea of how to make one, but I just have a vague idea, like, okay, I can do this rub and stick thing together, and I can twirl a stick with a bow, and maybe I can find some rocks that are the right kind of rocks, and I can make sparks, and maybe, possibly, you know, maybe I can get some water in some kind of way and make the water magnify the sunlight. But yeah, I'm not going to, you know, force me to go out tomorrow and make a fire. I'm not going to make one too well, probably, because I just haven't bothered to try to learn that skill. But it's a learned skill. I mean, it's just, you know, we're not born with the ability to make fire. It's just so stupid to compare humans to apes and say that somehow it's a measure of our genetic superiority that we conquered fire. No, it's just a measure of, again, our vocabulary. A lot of other people have to learn how to do something and then tell me how to do it. They tell me how to do it. And if we could truly teach an ape how to speak a true language, that is, how to even sign a true language with enough words in it. I mean, Coco the gorilla, it's sort of a stated fact that Coco didn't get to the Helen Keller level. Coco never knew that the sign language was a language describing things in the world, and so she really didn't have enough words yet to be able to think of it in terms of a real language. She was just using it as barter. She was exchanging a word for a word kind of thing, but not really a concept for a concept. She didn't conceptualize the signs. So she wasn't really capable of concepts like love or something, or feelings, and, you know, a lot of missing ability to express thoughts in a language. But anyway, I don't want to get into that argument. I mean, it all becomes an argument, unfortunately, with people, so no point in getting too deep into it. But clearly, I'd say that Coco is so much smarter than humans in many ways, just because Coco doesn't have three bear stories in Coco's head. Coco doesn't have these nonsensical fairy tales of happily ever after. Of I'll use my mutant powers, you know, to make a banana because I'm hungry. I'll just stretch my arm into the other room and pull a banana out of the, the banana bin. We're the ones that have all this fucktard in us that makes us dumb. All this misinformation and foolish expectations and daydreams and hopes and all of that crap that have us incredibly confused. And then unlike Coco, we have certain knowledge of things that are anxiety provoking, let's say, things that are worrisome, that will cause some dissonance in your brain, that will distract you. Notions like the idea of good luck and bad luck, getting lucky, which is a real thing in life, and the fact that good and bad luck can mean things like cancer and death, and that we will die, something Coco didn't have to worry about. So knowledge gives you an ability. Coco wasn't looking at its kitten and saying it's going to die, grow up, and it's going to get old and it's going to die. Didn't have to taint its experience of a moment or a time of its life with knowledge that this time will end, and I will have to transition into some other time, and then some other time where I'm going to be deeper in the quicksand, and life isn't going to be as much fun. Where people with intelligence have that burden of knowing it ain't going to be smooth sailing. There's going to be inevitably storms and seasickness, and and if you're unlucky, washed overboard. All that stuff's going to be happening, and you might have to live on an island for 6 months and then get rescued, and you have all kinds of parasites, and I'm just saying, we have the burden of knowledge of how vulnerable we are. Alright, but that really doesn't... So anyway, this is... I just think it's a stupid argument. And so the race argument in many ways just breaks down to these familiarities, our comfort zone, our preferences, what we like and what we don't like. If there's certain kind of foods you don't like, you don't even want them in your house. You're just like, I don't like that shit. I don't want it in my house. I don't want lima beans in my house. I don't like lima beans. They offend me just by existing. And some of that's true with race, or cultural behaviors and habits, and especially because of some of the conditioning we get in terms of some of these messages sent to us through mass media. The yowling, saber rattling, Muslim images and shit. These are all very negative stereotypes, so we end up inundated by some of those, and they end up turning whole classes of people into lima beans. I'd say it goes even deeper than that, to a lot of stuff that just has to do with aesthetics, what we find pretty or pleasant. Some people like really loud and yelly kind of music. Some people like really soft, elegant, precise, music. And so we like the same thing in people. Some people like people who are precise, clean, reliable in their performance, and other people like chaos and wacky and crazy and ditzy, and and those are just personal tastes. They're not genetic tastes. They're not something you're born with. It's just silly to think that these things are built into people. So I would argue that the only part of these biases that matter are just aesthetic ones. What you find fuckable, and ones that have to do with your cultural comfort zone, or however you want to put that. the aesthetics of your civilization. You know, whether you like order or whether you like disorder. You know, whether you like you know, a bunch of wildflowers in a field somewhere, or whether you like a nice golf course where everything's where it's supposed to be. You know, everything's cordoned off, and the wood chips don't blend into the lawn at all. They're all nicely divided lines, and then these are just things we're comfortable with and uncomfortable with, and we're just scapegoating race to say that's what we're going to blame for it, when the blame is the fact that we have very diverse cultures that are raising very different human beings in terms of, even when they don't even speak the same language. I mean, people can be born in America and speak a very different version of American. You know, not even close, really. And that doesn't have anything to do with genetics. It doesn't have anything to do with the egg. It has to do with where the nest is and where the egg's hatched. That's all it is. So anyway, I didn't want to get the whole pile of that crap because it's just crap. And again, even if there were some sort of substantial differences in terms of how we functioned, I'd still argue you don't need much more than a 60 IQ to understand the golden rule. And the only thing that makes you capable of denying it, and of saying I don't have to play by those rules, is a preposterously insane rationalization where you make yourself more important, where you make yourself, you know, white, and you make them black. You know, you make them something less than you somehow. And there's no way to do that rationally. So you're just stuck with being a convenientist, you know. So racists are just convenientists. They're just what's in it for meists, and they're just scapegoating race as a simple way of classifying all the things, all the facts they don't want to deal with, which is they're in a competitive environment, and you know, winning's not necessarily going to be about merit. It's going to be about stupid things like, you know, how many crack whores you gave money to have kids. You know, how many free lunches you gave away, you know, for no merit, or some other bullshit like that. Yeah, I don't know if that wasn't the best way to say that either. All right. Well, anyway, the second part of this I wanted to get to was so the intelligence thing. I'm saying is the intelligence is really, it's really easy to understand why Dr. Frankenstein didn't have a right to dig up some dead guy and reanimate him, right? I mean, he really just didn't have a right to do that. And then the simple metaphor is to say, well, there's no real difference than when somebody's pulling somebody out of the ether, so to speak, to be a new creation. There's really nothing different about the experiment. You're taking a substantial risk that your benefactor, the thing you're attempting to help, you know, is not going to appreciate the fact that you've degraded his circumstances. He's, you know, rather be dead than Frankenstein, the monster. Just, you know, just happens to be a fact that somebody could reasonably rather be left alone. And as a practical matter, we could understand that in the fact that we could just understand that, yeah, if I was born a Siamese twin, you know, horribly joined by important body parts, that maybe I could draw the conclusion that this is not a good idea. You know, this is too hard, too negative a condition to have to endure. You know, for what? You know. So we get to the for what part again is the intelligence thing. Again, another, doesn't take a really high intelligence to figure out that the average white person, or the average black person, or the average Asian person, or any average if you looked at that life, would you choose to live it in the world that exists? And I'm not too sure many of these people who are life defenders would jump at the opportunity to live that average life. And certainly not the average mammal life, which there'll be a high likelihood you'll die as a child, in some sort of way where you're scared and tormented before you're killed, like a Freddy's Nightmare or something. Not a winning circumstance. And you don't need a lot of intelligence to think up this stuff, so come on. Well, what's the argument about this high intelligence being vital to something? It's not vital to recognizing why you shouldn't drink and drive. You need a high IQ to do that? No, you don't. You just need a little bit of integrity and character. And as I'm sort of arguing, those things are so 2 + 2 obvious that it's kind of silly to argue about 10 or 12 IQ points meaning something, when you only need such a minor amount to figure this simple stuff out. The easy part of what it is to be human, leaving the condo better than you got it. I mean, it's a timeshare. You're all invested. You all own it. You don't live in it and degrade it, because if you let everybody else do that, your value is destroyed. And so it's in your own interest even to recognize that you got to do better. All right. So the other half of this is so that you have all this intelligence, this really easy to see facts of life, where you say, yes, there's these insanely bad outcomes that I would avoid like a plague. I would avoid if I had the power to. I'd pay a lot to avoid them. I'd compromise or sell off an awful lot of my assets to gain immunity to them. If I could guarantee you're going to get cancer, and I gave you this opportunity to somehow buy your way out of it, you'd start figuring out your assets and how much of your stuff you could dispose of. Well, I could get rid of that second car, and I could, you'd be pretty interested in seeing if you could find a way to raise the money to gain immunity. And that's just logic. I mean, it's simple logic. It's not, intelligent person can't deny that those truths exist. And why would I open the door to those outcomes that can't be fixed by buying it off? There won't be any magical answer. There's a real risk that every child you have, if they're not born poorly, okay, with some kind of condition, they might acquire one through life in the terms of getting alcoholism or drug addictions or trouble with women or some other kind of bullshit. And then there's all this idea of even if they lived a very decent and productive life, they'll be killed, at 60 years old from cancer. Never even get to their golden years. So, why risk that outcome? All right, so anyway, so that's the end of that preaching. So the other half of this was the side that makes people stupid, and that's the passion side. This desire and ambition stuff. And it's hard not to talk about it from a subjective point of view, in the sense that we all experience life cycles of passion. We all gain experience through our lives about how things work. So you can always use the first one you learn is like the Christmas one. Because as a kid, you have this notion that if you get what you want on Christmas, everything will be all right. Everything will just be right for the rest of your life. And you find out that, a few days after Christmas, you're not too satisfied anymore. That you're writing your new Christmas list, and there's a whole bunch of stuff you need, or life is going to be horrible. So even though you got what you thought you wanted, it just didn't finish you. It didn't complete you. Okay, as the movies would say. No, it doesn't complete you. And you're left wanting again. And as you gain more experience in life, you find out that a lot of these things you think you need, like I need to have that woman, or I need to be loved by somebody, or I need this, or I need that. And you find when you get these things that, you got so much more than you ever thought you'd have. And then you're sitting there having it, and all of a sudden you're starting looking around again for more. You're saying, I want more. Even though you have so much more than you even imagined you might get. It's like that capacity to appreciate just wanes and slips through your fingers. And something you thought was going to be everything just kind of turns into nothing. And you're left back seeking again and wanting. And you see this in other people's lives all over the place, where they seem to have what they want, and they fuck it all up because they end up wanting more. It's not enough. And so it's sort of like the kid at Christmas, in the sense it's the same kind of syndrome. We have this expectation that we can fix our problems, but somehow the problems come back and haunt us. So we fix one thing, you polish one scratch on the car, and you find some other spot that spot doesn't look too right either. It's too fuzzy. It's not sparkly enough. The paint looks a different, something. You find some other defect to worry about. You just pull the list like a Pez dispenser. The problems just seem to keep popping up. Even though it looked like this was the last one. This was the only important one. I fixed the important one. And all of a sudden you find out, hey, it wasn't so important after all. So anyway, that's sort of, this passion thing is just like that, in the sense that this wanting engine is really, like I say, you don't have to be very intelligent to figure out how it's kind of a malicious mechanism, in that we really aren't designed to be happy. We're designed to struggle, to always fight with the environment, to keep trying to mold it to our notions of what it should be, or what should be. And that those notions change as our circumstance changes. So as we fix something, we see other things to fix. And it's just the way we work. So that's sort of the genetic defect that we all have. Just being a mammalian organism. This is how they function. This is their chore, is to never really see their job as done. And we're just not made to be satisfied. It's not the state the brain works in. It works by finding things to do. Alright, so that's sort of getting towards this word passion, this idea of why do things become so important to us. I don't think I'll have an answer to that question, exactly why, beyond just this evolutionary answer. And the fact that so much of what we do is, conforms to this idea of being the best, or really good, or better than them anyway, the competition notion. And men and women are competing, alright, for their trophy partner. Both of them kind of want to wear another person as a way of showing something about them that may not be obvious, their merit. And we feed off of that, and so we're in this competition thing where we all want, and we know others want, and that we all can't have. And so we are kind of raised and kind of programmed genetically to be doing two things. Not only trying to get what we want directly, but all the indirect ways we get what we want. So you can win the race by running faster, or you can win the race by tripping the guy who runs faster than you. And so then our intelligence, we're supposed to be intelligent. And so there's a bunch of people on Earth who think intelligence is for the purpose of scheming about how to trip other people. And it's not about trying to run faster or to figure out why I won't even get in the race, that the race really isn't important. So instead of using intelligence to figure out I don't need to run this race, and that it certainly would be wrong to cheat, do something to sabotage the other players so I can get it, so I can get the trophy wife, blah, 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 blah. So I sort of wanted to get to that point that a lot of our passions, ego passions, are just, I'm trying to think of a word for replacements for, but I'm not thinking of the, it's the problem with age, you just lose some of your vocabulary. But what you're really after is the woman, and you get the woman by winning the race, that kind of thing. We're trying to win points so we look better. We look more worthy of somebody else's desire, or we think. And it's really just what we think, because if you really analyze the world, you'll see that that's not what decides who wins and who loses. So a lot of times people think they're working on building a really great resume that will earn them something, but they haven't figured out that that's not what, no one's impressed by that resume. What they're really looking for, is something stupid like, how big your toes are. But anyway, that's maybe a separate kind of subject. How we're deceived by just, again, these superficial notions about how the world really works when, they're just wrong notions. It doesn't work that way. Deserve doesn't have much to do with it. And, you're seldom going to win by playing by the rules. Because the playing by the rule path is traveled so infrequently that it has lots of bushes overgrowing it, and pricker bushes and all kinds of stuff. So the playing by the rules path is going to be the much harder path because nobody uses it. It's not the beaten path, which is the expedient, simple solution, wasteful solution, short-term gain, long-term waste solution. And that's the one human beings always seem to choose, and yet they're talking about how dumb other people are. It's just, it's kind of silly. So, what do I want to say about this passion thing? So much of it is, like I said, that as you get older, you could gain some perspective, and you can sort of see how, I understand how I want something, but I know if I get it, I'll eat too much of it, or I'll overdose, or, you kind of know that, yes, it's really not going to be good for me. It's not going to do me any good. And it's not going to solve my problem. As much as my brain is telling me somehow it will, I can know, this is a practical fact, that no, it'll end up being a lot more work and a lot of this and this and this. So I'm just saying that this sort of works out in just relationships with things. It's like the kitten is very cute, and you say, oh yes, it'll be nice to have a kitten, and da-da-da. But if you really think about it, no, it's going to get older, it's going to be a cat, it's going to need veterinary care, it's going to need this, and then it's going to die, and that's all going to be unpleasant. So it's not as free as that kitten looks. You know, just throw it in a box and it's happy. You know, it's not going to be that simple. And the same is true in your relationships with people. That none of it's harmless, and to get what you want, you're going to get a lot of stuff you don't want. And you know, if you're intelligent, you know that, and you do some thinking about, well, you know, how do I guarantee that I don't end up getting more I don't want and not enough I want, you know. So that this is sort of getting to the point where I can't say, you know, you're always going to have this need to satisfy urges inside of you that make you want to be cared for or loved or respected or admired or appreciated, even by yourself. So even your own, you know, your own sense of self-worth or justifying your own existence, even, there's going to be some need to create some definition of accomplishment and have some notion that you've satisfied that definition. And once you've done that, yes, then nothing else, the rest can be quite unurgent. So there is a state of mind you can get yourself to where you still have a sense of desire, you're still interested, but you don't fall for it, you don't take the bait. And so you safely remain in a state of curiosity and some sense of enjoyment, you know, without falling in to the trap. So you have the fun of the slide, but you don't slide far enough where you can't climb back out. Some kind of thing like that. And that's what I would argue, that some people, intelligent people, can find some place in their maturity where there's this greater balance between their passion and their intelligence, and you know, their life can become simpler and in a lot of respects less dangerous and less harmful, because they're just not subject to the impulsive jumping, leaping at opportunity, because they know many opportunities carry with them huge burdens and liabilities. So they don't just jump at every opportunity. They sort of know there's venereal diseases, and they say, okay, she's saying, you know, you can have me, and I can jump at the opportunity, or I can recognize that, yeah, that might be a trap, you know, and I'll be ruined by it, that kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, I didn't have a plan for mixing these two words. They just fell into place just through a couple of these different conversations in the videos I watched, and they don't mix very well. But clearly we're designed by nature to use this intelligence in both ways. Not only to get what we want, but to destroy everything that tries to take it before we get it. And it's not much of a trick. It's not much of a mind game controlling your nature to recognize that no, only one part of that scheming has anything to do with integrity or character or goodness or rightness or anything truly intelligent. Figures out that cheating is bullshit and that you don't do that. So now your intelligence can be working for the more sensible goal, which is just having winners efficiently as possible with as few damage and as little a few forest fires caused by the fun. You want to have your little Jedi adventure with as few planets getting blown up by Death Stars as possible. Minimize the losses in playing your game. And then on the big picture, obviously I would argue the way to minimize the losses is just not to play, because it's a casino. The universe is it's a Trumpian casino, and it's only interested in stealing money. I mean, it's really not interested in doing anything else. It will make you lose in the end. So don't play. You're just going to create a loser. And another context for this is that as dumb as humans are, most of them are accidentally, sort of incidentally, recognizing at least the simplest part of this argument is that procreation has liabilities. And many people are recognizing that just for their own selfish reasons, why should I get into that game? I don't have any urgent desire to create another average human being to live another average life, being, drunk and overweight. It just doesn't sound like a great idea to make one of those things. So they're accidentally already not playing. They've already decided not to play the game in a way without saying it formally. They're still pretending to be game supporters, but they're really not. And I wonder how much they'd actually pay out of their own life if, let's say they didn't have the ignorant masses to come to the rescue, to have a bunch more of ignorant people. If we didn't have the dumbasses to overbreed, and there was a real threat that the human population was really shrinking, and that it was going to be, just in a mere 150 years or something, we would be extinct. You wonder how much the average person would pay to have average dumbasses come to save the day and make some more average dumbasses. I certainly wouldn't pay for it. It's just I can't find in me any kind of emotional reason to think it would be worth it. That's a good thing to do. And I don't know how other people contrive with their own selfish passion engine any notion of how that makes any sense. Except the way they're doing it, I suppose, is they're saying if everybody turns brown, that would be a bad thing. Brown people win. So they gotta try to help the white people win somehow. Or some kind of notion like that. But that's all you can kind of figure, is they're turning it into some kind of personal competition with a created bad guy. So they're creating a war to fight. Then the war really isn't worth fighting, because both sides, either side wins, the world loses. It's a fight between Mussolini and Hitler. It's a fight between asshole and idiot, jackass and fucktard. There won't be a good win. There'll just be shitty outcome or shittier outcome. Yeah, it's probably enough. I should have come to the table with more words. I should have used my intelligence. My intelligence knew that it's not a great idea to make a video that doesn't really have a start here and end here. And I really didn't have a start here and end here. I had a start. There's an idea of intelligence or knowledge. And really, most of that is just not being stupid. I mean, the secret to being intelligent is not to be stupid. Not to do something dumb. Eliminating the errors is more important than acquiring the knowledge, because the knowledge is so rudimentary. It's so 2 + 2 = 4. It's so easy to find the key pieces of wisdom And really all you're trying to do is avoid the crap that fuddles, that breaks the logic of your brain, the bad facts that you hold in your head, the ones that aren't facts, clearly. And that our passions are really just this whole genetic thing where I could quite reasonably argue that I spent most of my life trying to accomplish because I figured it would get me better pussy to fuck, to be kind of gross about it. That's all my brain was doing, was trying to think of ways to succeed just because success meant I get to fuck the hotter chicks. Something like that. Even though I knew that that I'm not the marrying kind, and I'm not the sleep around kind either. I was already kind of in a trap because I couldn't even think how you do this relationship thing rationally anyway. I mean, if I if I like the person, then I get attached to the person. It's like a cat or anything else. You pet it a few times and you talk to it, and all of a sudden we're friends. And I don't want my cat sleeping with somebody else, so to speak. I'll be hurt. Just as, So once you start doing this conquest thing, I'm just saying I'm just not a sleep-arounder, because if I could desire somebody once, I can desire them twice or 5 times or 15, and then it just becomes a habit, and then you're doomed. So I just don't even see I don't see how it works either way. So even though I wanted this thing, I didn't really have a practical thought in my head about how you actually implement the life. And I kind of knew that yes, once in a while you can find somebody who just wants your company for a few hours a week, and you don't have any of the burdens of a full relationship and emotional attachment, but that is rare. And I was sort of living for that kind of unattainable relationship that really can't exist in the real world. But I was still highly motivated, thinking this is what I'm aiming for. So it was just a delusion that it was even possible, and yet I was fully functional in terms of using that as a motivating mechanism to be somebody. Now, I pretty colossally failed at being anybody, but I think for a lot of reasons that aren't my fault. Not the fault of my capacity, just the fault of the fact that I had some neurological broken bolts in my brain, an anxiety disorder that made me sort of incapable of, you can't play the game without, certain minimum functional features, legs you can walk on, kind of thing. But in a way, that's a huge benefit. So we're again back to this idea of how we acquire intelligence. And the fact is that I might not have been as clever enough. I might not have gained any wisdom or knowledge of the power of the game to control if I hadn't had some distance from the game. If I hadn't been knocked out of the game in some respects, I wouldn't have spent the time I spent doing things that I think were much more enriching in terms of enhancing my knowledge of the world. Just a fact. I wouldn't have read as many books, and I wouldn't have done a lot of things I did if I didn't have the obligation to self-entertain. I would have been a different person. How significantly different? It's an open question, but I certainly could have been capable of getting caught up in it, and caught up in making rationalizations and excuses for being a me firster, or being a what's in it for me-er. That certainly was still, I was still capable of that, even though I knew that golden rule thing. I also knew that it doesn't matter if I'm the only one playing by the golden rule. That's retarded. So if everybody else is breaking the rules, blah, 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 blah. So you can always come up with rationalizations and excuses for two wrongs make a right kind of thing. You can make that make sense in some superficial way, and find justifications for being a bigger jerk than you really need to be. Yeah. So again, it doesn't take much intelligence. It just takes honesty. And we're all capable of being really dishonest when it's convenient, and especially when we're aroused. It becomes really easy to make excuses, not to worry about it, not to think about it, to imagine, to use imaginary mechanisms to enable you to be fundamentally stupid. Yeah. Well, anyway, I still think that whatever, didn't do complete justice to either one of these words, but yeah, it is what it is. And I'll attempt to do better next time. As always, I am aware of the fact that I do have some obligation to do what all of us should be attempting to do, which is to improve our performance. Let's make a little bit of effort, and find the passion to make that effort. Yeah, I'm just acknowledging that, yes, I'm not satisfied. I have to do better. I have to more you can make the lines, the thought more parallel and perfect, and less, a little less sloppy. But anyway, yeah. But you can, you can start with anything, almost any two words, almost, and you can tie them to reality, and so sort of make them the center of the universe you're talking about. So you can take any point in space and sort of describe the rest of the universe from that point of view, and the description will be very similar. The view from Saturn isn't that much different than the view from Pluto or Mercury. It's all, the ideas, the themes are all the same. And the conversation always has to be built around the fact that we're just these biological organisms designed to replicate the molecule, and that our intelligence exists merely as a tool to perform that task, as a way of making us more competitive, and not necessarily competitive in a honorable way, playing a good game, but just competitive. And intelligence can recognize that's a huge flaw in our creation. Huge flaw, huge design flaw, is this absence of appreciation built into us for the idea of merit, earning. They're really important concepts. In terms of, in the long term, those things have to mean something for a civilization to grow, expand in any kind of good way, to elevate its intelligence, essentially. We don't get smarter without recognizing the foundational axioms, the truths that are the foundation of our existence. And the truth that we perform, as I stated in the video earlier in the week, in the world, and that performance can be judged based on whether it leaves the world a better place or a worser place, it's just obvious. We do have to justify our existence. And, that's the function of intelligence, is to make us capable of performing well enough where we can justify our existence. And the intelligence need to do that is not very much. Doesn't take much logic. Doesn't take very many facts. Let's put it that way. You don't have to have a huge volume of facts to understand that me having a broken leg isn't worse than somebody else having a broken leg. In theory, it's a broken leg. It just doesn't matter who's doing it. The suffering is the same. It just doesn't matter what brain is actually doing it. It's bad that a brain is doing it. Period. That is so simple that why do you need a conversation about intelligence? Because once you do that, once you have that knowledge, then it's sort of game over, because everything else you just realize that this is a silly risk game where there's no real reward here. You're not accomplishing anything. The human race will not accomplish anything. It will be, everything we're doing will be burned to an unrecognizable cinder. It's all going to be cremated into unrecognizable dust. So why keep doing it when it's so expensive? So expensive. So much pain for just no gain. So anyway, it's enough. So till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. So if there's any other people who wish to be a guest, email me at Gary@donotgo.com. And every now and then somebody gets blocked for an illegitimate reason, because I am hasty and I really don't have time sometimes to be perfect in my analysis of who's being an asshole. I clearly sometimes make mistakes. So if you feel I have done you a disservice and you wish to claim your right to type crap on my videos or in the live streams, then just email Gary@donotgo.com your channel, and I'll unblock you. I apologize, and if I have done these, if I've made these mistakes. Yeah, so that's enough housekeeping crap, I think. Yeah. So till the next time. I am working on things, but I'm working on things just so much. I mean, every day I think of some new I could do this experiment, I could do this thing, and I could do, and there's just not enough me to go around. I need a few me's. There's just too much to do and too little whatever. Yeah. No, it's too much for one person. Too much. Yeah. Anyway, till next time. Such.